Yesterday we heard James telling us that we cannot blame our sin on God because temptation does not come from God. Today James is going to tell us what it is that does come from God. Read along with me, James chapter 1 verses 16 to 18. Don't be deceived, my dear brothers and sisters. That's in reference to God tempting us. Every good and perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. See that? Only good and perfect gifts come from God, not temptation. Verse 18. He chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of first fruits of all he created. James is telling his readers that we can't be deceived and think that temptation comes from God, because only good and perfect gifts come from God. And from this short passage, I want to point out two really encouraging truths. Firstly, we can trust the giver of gifts. How do we know we can trust him? Well, verse 16 tells us that he's the Father of heavenly lights. This means he is the creator of all things. He holds the universe in his hands and commands the planets, tides, wind and waves. He is powerful, so we can trust his power. And it also tells us that God does not change like shifting shadows. God is trustworthy because he is predictable and reliable. He keeps his word. He fulfills his promises. He is eternal, stable, never-ending, and good. We can trust the giver of gifts because he has both the power and the desire to give us good gifts, and the reliability to follow through on his promises. He will not promise anything he cannot gift us, and he will give us everything that he has promised, and these gifts are perfect and good. We can trust the giver of gifts. The second encouragement from this passage is the magnitude of his gifts. In verse 18, James lists three of the good and perfect gifts. Verse 18, he chose to give us birth through the word of truth, that we might be a kind of firstfruits of all that he created. God, in his grace, has chosen to give us new birth. What a gift. As Paul says in Ephesians, we were dead in our sins, but God, being rich in mercy, made us alive in Jesus Christ. And James said he did this through the word of truth. That means that we are able to come to a knowledge of our new birth through his word revealed in the Bible. And this means that we are able to come to a knowledge of him through his word. He did all these things, James says, so that we may be the first fruits of all he created. In the Old Testament, first fruits were viewed as the best part of someone's harvest, the cream of the crop. And so God is making us, Christians, to be the cream of all creation. As Christians, we are redeemed, and as we are sanctified, we are transformed into Christ's likeness to represent true humanity as we become who we were created to be. God gives us new birth, God gives us his word, and God gives us transformation. Now, since this is a wisdom devotional, what practical wisdom can we glean from what we've learned? Well, since we've learned that we can trust God to give good gifts, we should seek and yearn for the gifts that God gives. New birth, his word, spiritual transformation. We would do well to seek these things in our lives, knowing that they are good and that perfect, and they will bring more lasting joy and satisfaction than the gifts of the world. So to seek these things out, to yearn for these gifts, to chase after these gifts, to receive these gracious gifts from God more than we seek out the gifts of this world. So go today, enjoying your new birth, seeking God in his word and allowing him to transform you, because these are all good and perfect gifts from God.